presenting in English. This is me. My name is Lisa Crosbie. As I was saying, I was a host of the Up podcast. You'll find me on YouTube and all over various social media channels and so on. So as I said, I've done a fair bit of work in the last 6 months going through top 10 new features. So every time there's a new release wave or an event, I've gone through and summarized the top 10 features. So what I've got here for you today is my top 10 of kind of everything that I think is going on for the year. So I've stepped it back a level to say, what are the top 10 features that you can look forward to that are really those core top 10 themes that we are working with this year? So just to give you the lay of the land of where I'm coming from here, it used to be, I've followed the new releases really closely for the last couple of years, and it used to be that we would get the Wave 1 release in January and the Wave 2 release around this time of the year in July, and we still get those things. But the thing I've noticed is, especially since we've switched to the world of virtual events rather than in-person events, is that Microsoft is really saving the big announcements for the big events. So reading the release notes sometimes feels a little underwhelming, and then you go to an event and there's your big announcement. So what I've brought together today is all of these things. We had the Wave 1 release in January, which is everything that goes from April through to September. Then what we have in March is Ignite, and there are some substantial announcements out of Ignite. Number one actually came out of Ignite. In May, we had Microsoft Build and the Microsoft Business Application Summit, MBAS. And then in July, we got our Wave 2 release notes. That's only happened in the last couple of weeks. So there's some things in here that are really hot off the press, as well as Inspire, which is a partner conference that not everyone's at, and a couple of really important announcements that snuck in there too. So this is my top 10 across all of these things rather than just from the Wave 2 release. And I'll tell you as we go through where each of these things came from. All right, now, number one, if you followed anything I've done or you've listened to the podcast or whatever, you'll know this is my favorite topic. This was one of my top picks from last year and continues to be my top pick. You'll also know that when I do a top 10, I do tend to cheat a little bit and give you a couple of bonus topics. So number one here has about 4 different subtopics in it. Don't say you don't get good value. So number one here is all about Dynamics 365 and Teams. And in bringing together all of these different events and announcements, I'm really trying to bring you those big themes. And this is absolutely a big theme for those of us who work in this space. This really changes the game. For customers in this space, you're getting a heap of extra things in terms of having a system of collaboration and a system of record in the one place. As I said, this is a little bit of a 4-for-1 here. So I'm going to talk through the announcements that we've seen and things that are forthcoming in that Dynamics 365 and Teams integration. So the first one here is embedded chat. This was announced at Ignite. So you'll see there we have a pane down the right-hand side of Dynamics with the chat in it. This has got all of the different relevant chats, as well as suggested chats and suggested channels and relevant channels. And you can see there as well, just next to that, there's a little pop-up window which has a chat going on in Teams. Now, the other user there may not be a Dynamics 365 user. They might just be having that chat in Teams in the flow of their work, and that chat window gives you that full feature of the chat experience in Teams. So you've got your GIFs and emojis. If you're using those things, you can upload documents and have the chat in context. So this is something that really makes a huge difference for customers working with this and as consultants working with this, is that we've got that experience now of collaboration embedded in Dynamics, and also the experience of people being able to use it in Teams. The next thing, and this is a really important sort of side to this, is that we have got collaborative apps in Teams. So we looked at it from the Dynamics side. Now we go over and have a look at it from the Teams side. And this one was announced just at Inspire, which is the partner conference that happened in July. The important thing of what I'm showing you here is that you don't need to purchase Dynamics 365 licenses for people in your organization to be able to use this functionality in Teams. This is a game changer for working in this space. There's nobody else who's offering anything like this, that ability to allow other users across the whole organization to collaborate on the Dynamics 365 data from within Teams without having to be licensed. And obviously, your sellers using the full feature of the product still have to be licensed. But if you've got a seller who needs to work with, say, product specialists or marketing specialists or whatever behind the scenes, then that can happen inside Teams. So we've got a screenshot here as an example of somebody looking at a particular deal adding in a comment. You can actually edit the data and so on in there as well. So the experience goes both ways, and this is very much part of this integration, that you can work with that Teams chat in Dynamics 365, but also from in Teams, you can work with that Dynamics 365 data. We've also got Teams calling embedded in Dynamics 365. So that ability to make that phone call in the context of the CRM and the transcription that comes through. And this starts to look a little bit like magic, because we get that automated transcription and then a report at the end, which summarizes what's happened. It pulls out sentiment and key action points and all sorts of things, which really takes a heap of work off the salesperson, allows them to focus on the call rather than having to transcribe all of that. This one might almost be my favorite, and this is the fourth of the four here. I haven't got four for every top 10, don't worry. I always spend a lot more time on the bigger ones up front and a little less as we go through. But this is Teams meeting integration. This was also just recently announced. This is, you imagine you're in a Teams call, so we're doing all of this remote selling and remote sales calls. And what we've got down the side here is a Dynamics 365 pane. Think of this a little bit like when you're working in Outlook and you have the Outlook panel down the side, the Dynamics panel down the side in Outlook. So you're in Outlook and you see the Dynamics information. It's not unlike that. What we've got here is all the information about the opportunity. So imagine I've been brought into a call to help with working on an opportunity with my sales colleague. I've got all the information there about, what the close date is, what the estimated revenue is, as well as the people who are involved and their job titles. I can see relationship health, I can see activities, the next activity, and so on, and notes about what's going on, and also add notes, which will go straight back into Dynamics 365, all in the context of that meeting. All right, that's the end of number one. Let's have a look at number two here, which is a big piece that comes out of the marketing space, which is customer journey orchestration. So this was first announced back at Ignite again in about March. And this really rethinks the concept of marketing automation, but it's not just marketing. This is now going to overlap with sales and service. And this is why I put this one up very high, because it starts to reinvent that idea of this is not just a marketing space. And this is all about real-time event-based triggers rather than traditional marketing automation. We say, let's grab people who are like and put them in a segment together and then put them on a journey of particular communications. This can take particular events that happen. Someone clicks on an email, of course, or visits a website, or maybe they check in on your app, or they scan through at an event, or come onto your Wi-Fi or whatever. Pretty much all of those things you can start to enable here. So you've got this real-time triggering and then AI involved in the journey to give people that absolutely personalized experience. So this was one of the bigger announcements from earlier in the year. This is in preview at the moment, hopefully generally available fairly soon. The thing that we're seeing that came through in conjunction with this in the Wave 2 release, which is one of my top picks from the Wave 2 release, is that you will be able to use this with Flow. So if I skip back a bit here, this is the journey designer that we get. We will be able to actually trigger cloud flows using Power Automate from inside here. And this is where this starts to get much bigger than just marketing now, because you can orchestrate tasks, events, all sorts of things to happen. The screenshot I've got here is actually showing you what's going on underneath the customer journey. So when you build out that new customer journey in the customer journey orchestration tool, without you doing this, it's actually building it as a flow under the hood. And that's what's enabling what's going on there. Super clever, and heaps of things that we're going to be able to do with that one. At number 3 here, we have custom pages for model-driven apps. Now, the next 3 features are all kind of getting into the Power Apps and model-driven apps side of things. I'm covering Dynamics and Power Platform here. I should say I'm covering Dynamics sort of from the customer engagement point of view, rather than the F&O side, which I will leave to people who know far more about that than me. So what we've got here is custom pages for model-driven apps. Now, this one was announced at the Microsoft Business Application Summit, and there's just been a blog about this one on like the 27th of July just this week. This is about the convergence of Canvas and model-driven apps, and this is huge because we are getting to a point in the future where we won't think about Canvas apps, model-driven apps. It's all just Power Apps, and we have the tools of both available to us. So what's announced here is the ability to create a custom page for a model-driven app, which means you can use the tools of the Canvas app, the drag and drop, the pixel perfect, the connect to other data sources to create a custom page for your model-driven app. So if you want to start creating things like landing pages or different kind of processes to be optimized, bringing productivity tools in there as well, there's heaps that we're going to be able to do here. And this is a screenshot of one of the examples that was presented at the Microsoft Business Application Summit. Haven't had time to get in and have a play with that myself, but there's going to be heaps that we can do in there. All right, at number 4, another Power Apps thing here, which is PowerFX for model-driven apps. Now, we know that when we're working in Dynamics 365 or a model-driven app, if you want to customize what's going on inside there with things like the command bar, that's not possible to do without external tools or code. And there are some great tools that we've been using to work with that. But you need that sort of professional developer skill set. So what we're seeing is the ability to use PowerFX, which is the low code language that's used in Canvas apps, that Excel-like formula language, to write formulas for model-driven apps as well, which means you can create things on the command bar without needing to use JavaScript or other tools. And the other part to this, and I should say these slides are directly the Microsoft slides from the Business Application Summit, is Dataverse calculated columns and PowerFX. So we're getting a much better experience, I dare say, than the legacy experience of doing calculated columns and roll-ups and so on, where you can actually use the expression language in there to do those calculations as well, which I'm expecting will open up a heap of additional features as well as being much easier to work with. All right, nearly halfway here. At number 5, we have no code apps. I'm really excited about this one. This one is getting into this world of natural language, and we see this as a core theme across a heap of things. It pops up in the marketing segmenting, it's popping up in Power BI as well to write DAX formulas with no code. So this is something that we're really just at the start of this natural language journey where we can use these tools instead of having to write code. So there's two aspects to this. One of these is using GPT-3, which is written by OpenAI. It's a huge natural language processing um, I don't have the word for it. It's a huge resource that's used behind the scenes here so that you can actually just type language, type natural language in there so that you don't have to come up with those PowerFX formulas. So as much as PowerFX enables a low code experience, I talk to new users all the time. That experience of getting on board with that and learning it is still quite a leg up to get into building these things. And so this is an idea where you can start to type that in natural language and it will construct the formula for you. So that opens it up to even more people. Also shortcuts things for those of us who do write the formula language to be able to get there perhaps a little bit quicker and a little bit more easily. And then the other side of this is program by example using prose. And this is about where you've got things where you need things in a certain format. If you want to be adjusting date formats or working with something where you've got, say, the person's name and you want it to just be the first name and the first initial or something like that, that you can use examples to do the formatting, again, rather than having to construct formulas from scratch to do that formatting piece. Now, at number 6, we have the Deal Manager Workspace. I'm switching now back into the Dynamics 365 world, and this is Dynamics 365 Sales. When this one was first announced, it was called the Pipeline Manager Workspace. It's now called the Deal Manager, so you might see it referred to in both ways. This was announced in Wave 1, and then it also appeared in the Wave 2 release. And essentially what this is a new dashboard feature that allows the seller to do a heap of things, and also announced in the Wave 2 release, a new, proper, thankfully, editable inline experience. Because I remember how excited we were when the editable grids first came through. They haven't, they're not as awesome as we might have hoped. So what we have on the screen here is a preview of this new Deal Manager workspace, and you'll see this allows you to view and work with lots of different things on the screen. So we have metrics at the top there of key metrics that we, might be looking at as sellers, as well as charts. We have down the bottom this editable grid. So the experience here is that you can inline actually edit things. So this allows you to change lookup fields, change dates, change things, and honestly, a much better experience than we're getting in the current editable grid. And as part of the Wave 2 release, what's been announced is that that functionality will be available for some of those data tables. I think it's accounts, contacts, and it's either opportunities or leads off the top of my head that we'll be able to use that for. So we're actually getting out of this piece of work an amazing dashboard that allows sellers to work more easily, but also that vastly improved functionality that really lifts the user interface. What you'll see down the side there, that side pane is also part of this, so we can actually edit things. So you imagine at the moment, if you're a seller and you're working with opportunities and you've got your view, like you're on a dashboard, you're clicking through, but you've got a view of opportunities in the system, you really have to click in and open it up to work with it. So the idea here is you're working from a dashboard that's giving you all of those key metrics right there, and you can click on one of those, you can edit in line, but you can click on it and have that side panel and actually edit in the side panel, and then just click on the next one and edit in the side panel. So we're working from this single view and this single screen rather than that kind of clicking in and out. I worked as a sales manager for a long time. Certainly anything that helps sellers do their data entry without pain and puts it right in front of them in that way, always, always a top feature in my book. All right, now this one is a bit of a hybrid of things. This is at number 7 here, industry clouds and components. So the industry components was probably the announcement piece that came out of Build. There were quite a lot of announcements out of Microsoft Build, actually. That was one that was traditionally very pro-developer, but now that we start to look at, all kinds of developers being included in Build, a lot of those announcements about PowerFX and so on came out there. If you haven't been keeping up with the notion of industry clouds, get onto it. This is huge. Microsoft is investing very, very heavily in this industry solution, industry cloud space. We have got or will shortly be seeing industry clouds for healthcare, manufacturing, retail, financial services, and nonprofit over the course of this year and into next year. And the industry clouds are really bringing together a lot of different pieces. So when you see the demos and things of them, you go, oh, that's Dynamics, but more than Dynamics. So what we're getting is something that is Dynamics 365 plus Azure and a heap of AI underneath, plus Teams, plus the Microsoft 365 stack in there as well. So there's a lot of things going on, but they're really pulling all of these resources together so that we can work in industry verticals and have all of that IP pretty much ready to go and, of course, configurable. And so what we saw at Build was this notion of industry components. This is an example of one from financial services, where because they've built all of these pieces, then these components can actually be reused. So if you have the notion of a customer 360 in financial services, where you might be looking at different events about the person's life and their likelihood to churn in their financial situation and key metrics and so on in finance, then you can basically lift that customer 360 and use it in your own app rather than having to build it from scratch. So there's a heap going on in those industry solutions and those industry clouds. As I said, if you're not across this, make sure you get across it this year. This is it's going to be absolutely huge if it's not already. At number 8 here, we have Power Automate Desktop. Now, this is not new in itself, but there were 2 new announcements, one from Ignite and one from the Wave 2 release that I wanted to point out here. And I think this is another one of these things where I'm going to say get across this if you haven't already. Power Automate Desktop is the robotic process automation functionality in the platform. So within Power Automate, we have the ability to do cloud flows, we have the ability to do those business process flows, and now in addition to that, we have this RPA, robotic process automation functionality. Essentially what that allows you to do is to automate across systems where you can't connect via an API for whatever reason. So you can do recording of your keystrokes and mouse movements and clicks and so and they get replayed. So that allows you to automate across legacy systems. It allows you to automate across web-based systems and those kinds of things where you can't do it in that way. And this really gives us an edge in this space where, other RPA services don't have the traditional kind of APIs in there and vice versa. So we can actually get the best of both. And that's where this Wave 2 release comes in, because what we've seen announced in the Wave 2 release is the ability to use connectors with Power Automate Desktop. So all of those connectors that are available in the platform, and it's up to like 475 now, will be available here. So you don't have to build a separate cloud flow. You'll be able to go from where you are and use those, including to Dataverse, which makes that a very easy experience when working with our model-driven apps and Dynamics 365. The other thing that's really important here is one of the other announcements that's been made this year is around making Power Automate Desktop available free, obviously not with all the premium connectors, but free to Windows 10 users, and that will be Windows 11 as well now. So what that does is basically opens up a huge market of people who are going to discover this in the same way we've seen with people discovering Power Apps through their productivity tools. This is going into Windows. So I can see there's going to be absolutely huge kind of growth in this market and interest in this tool once it's in the hands of all of those Windows users. So really important one for us to be aware of. At number 9, we have the concept of no-code personalization in marketing. Now, this might not seem like a huge deal. I do a fair bit of work in the marketing space, and if we think back to my number 2 feature, which was that customer journey orchestration, we really have a huge shift this year in the platform around investment in and new tools in marketing, which is why I'm calling this one out as well, because it flows on from that. We're seeing a lot more coming in that marketing space, this unique proposition of the sales and marketing tools being on the one platform, Teams webinars integrated with Dynamics Marketing. So Dynamics Marketing is becoming a bit more of a player in all of this. And this is one of the really important pieces that I see coming through with the marketing side is personalization, because everybody wants to be able to personalize those communications out to their customers. This is something that we see happening, especially with this customer journey orchestration come through, that we're not just doing megaphone style communications anymore. The desire is to have very highly tailored, highly personalized communications. And there's been some capability to do that already, but you've had to kind of get into code in order to be able to do more of it. And what we're seeing very soon, I believe, is this feature coming through, which is the ability to personalize down to 6 levels in your data, so that you can start to do things like we see here, where we've got like here's your passenger name, but then you can go down a level to the booking code and the flight number and so on, and bring in those personalized fields from other data tables in the system. And last but not least, we have the Sales mobile app. Now, it might seem strange in a remote working world to be excited about the mobile app, but I actually think we're all still using our phones. I'm still using plenty of apps on my phone, even in lockdown. That experience of being able to do things on your phone is something that people really love to do. And what we always had in the past with the mobile app was actually something that was more like just a reversioned experience of the web-based app. So in the past, we would have, you're just looking at the same experience as what you had before. And what we're seeing with the new mobile app, which was launched earlier this year, is something that's properly designed as a standalone application. It's free. You connect it to your Dynamics 365 environment, is putting the things that the seller needs right front and center. And as I said earlier, anything that makes it easier for sellers to keep their data up to date, always a winner. So what this is doing is showing you a bit of an example of what it looks like at the moment, where we've got a very, front and center. Here are these things. Here are my key customers. Here are my recent customers. Here are my upcoming meetings. I can prepare for a meeting by going in and seeing what's going on and getting all of the information about the customers who are involved and the key parts of the opportunity. I can take notes in there as well and use the voice activation on my phone to transcribe, a note and so on. And so what we're seeing coming through in the next part of the Wave 2 release that's been announced is a heap of other things that are going to make this even easier. So this idea of notes is great, but we're also going to see things like being able to scan handwritten notes. We're going to be able to see scanning business cards, suggested action items when filling in notes, all of those kinds of things, as well as some better stuff coming through with the phone call side of things. So creating an activity record after a phone call, automatic transcription for Teams calls and online meetings, those conversation insights again. So heaps of things coming through there. There's actually quite a big section in the Wave 2 release on the Sales mobile app and a heap of functionality coming through in there. All right, so there's my top 10 of kind of big things to keep an eye on, big things to look forward to. Just to recap in the last few minutes here, at number 1, Dynamics 365 and Teams. So heaps of things coming there: meeting integration, chat integration, and so on. We have customer journey orchestration coming into the marketing space. Custom pages for model-driven apps at number 3. PowerFX for model-driven apps, so you can do your commanding without having to write any code now in model-driven apps. No code, natural language experience for Power Apps at number 5. At number 6, that deal manager workspace with all of the incredible extra things that we're going to get in the UI of Dynamics customer engagement apps that come with that. Keep an eye on those industry clouds and the reusable components there. Power Automate desktop, robotic process automation, including being able to use all of the platform connectors with that. No code personalization in the marketing experience, and that great sales mobile app experience. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that's been helpful, and lots for us to look forward to there.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Really appreciate. It was so much informative. Really a good summary. And one thing I have host Lisa this way in a couple of meetups, and always people after Lisa's session they always ask, "Can we get recording of this session?" Or but I can tell we will have recording.
There you
But
go. Good.
and if from audience someone wants to ask any question to Lisa, we have a couple of minutes. Please feel free to use comments section in our YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook channels. And meanwhile, Lisa, before I receive any questions from live from our audience, please tell us quickly about yourself, a little personal aspect, how you come to IT, what was your experience. I think that will be really
Sure.
motivative for many people.
Yeah, okay. So I've actually only worked in this space for about 5 years now. So I actually came to this out of a career in book publishing, which is highly unusual. I actually am qualified as a librarian, hence my little library stamp badges there. If anyone looks closely at my jacket, I've got a little library, little old school library card and library stamp. So I worked in book publishing for a very long time. I actually worked in sales and marketing jobs in book publishing, and always had an interest in the tech side of things. And every time there was a CRM project or something going on, I'd be like, oh, could I help with that? So I actually came out of, being in a sales role and a sales manager role in that industry and dabbling in that to a point where the consultants who actually worked with us, we deployed Dynamics 365, and I had a job where I actually had a senior manager role where I was the project sponsor for implementing that. And I took a huge leap out of a long career and decided to have a crack at working in this space. Honestly, I could not have designed that timing better. With all the hindsight in the world, that was absolutely perfect timing to be getting into that. I went from an industry where I felt like I wasn't learning and growing anymore, and now I do this and I got everything I wished for. And you do say careful what you wish for, but I haven't looked back at all. So for me, educating people who are like I was 5 years ago and helping them understand these tools. I used to do hideous things with Excel back in my old career, so it's been a delight and absolutely perfect timing, honestly, to be getting into this space.
Yeah, obviously it is. Thank you so much for sharing your like the way you become a power platform evangelist. And Lisa, any tips like no doubt platform is good, technology is good. uh, I will try to use this opportunity to ask a couple of a little personal questions, if
Sure.
you uh,
Why not?
uh, like how you cope with the challenge of like a lot of advancements in technology and anything for audience, anything that can help in this
Yeah.
area.
I think for me, and I, reflected on this when I did my career change, that I genuinely love learning, and my biggest motivation for the career change, honestly, was that I felt stuck, that I wasn't learning anymore. And I think if you have that quality, or you can foster that quality of really genuinely wanting to learn, for me, there's the willingness to learn, desire to learn, and the willingness to get out of your comfort zone. Because honestly, I'm up to date today, I won't be up to date tomorrow. It's changing all the time, and anyone who thinks they know everything in this space now is kidding themselves or kidding other people. So for me, it's about, I know lots of people, I've built an incredibly good network of amazing people in the community, and I ask them questions and they ask me questions, because we always have our specialty areas, and people specialize in certain things. So having a good network, being willing to learn, and I think really, really being willing to get out of your comfort zone. I have so many times in my role at the moment said yes and then figured it out later, and I would not have got as far as I have had I not been brave enough to do that. And some days, honestly, I think, why did I say yes? Why did I say yes? How am I going to figure that thing out? But that
Yeah,
forces you to draw on those resources, and it forces you to learn and do those things. And honestly, for me, that's an absolutely key skill, to be able to just go, I'm just going to get out of my comfort zone and
yeah.
do it. Mm.
Awesome, awesome. Of course, I mean, it always helps. And Lisa, how you cope up with work-life balance? Anything, any tips, particularly if you are doing
Oh,
something?
yeah, look, I'm probably not the best at that. I get very carried away with things and then can't stop doing them, so I tend to do a lot of this in my spare time. I do
Yeah,
recognize when I've hit the wall and kind of go, I do need to step away now. I have things I enjoy doing. I love reading.
yeah,
So if I can find a good book to immerse myself in and put the devices in another room, I think that
yeah,
idea of balance
yeah.
is helped by that. It's been challenging. In Melbourne, we've been in lockdown for a fair
That's
part of
right.
the last 18 months, so the balance is all a bit up the creek there anyway. So